It's about 12:30, about 3 hours after I poured, and I had a major disaster. I don't know if I've avoided it, but that copper plate is like 20 gauge. It's like what they use for flashing like roof gutters. And now I'm kicking myself in the ass for not spending a little more money buying a thicker piece of copper and cutting that out. The temperature spiked to 100 degrees, so that copper stretched and it buckled like a highway. I'm going to insert a picture I took a little while ago when it was really bad. So I got my exhaust fan running, and I've dropped the temperature of the room from about 84 degrees down to 74. And right now the temperature at 11:30 was 83, then it spiked at 96 at 11, and that's when I noticed the buckling. And right now in this spot it's 85, so I've dropped it about 10 degrees in an hour and a half. And what I did is, this epoxy is still somewhat liquid. I took a stir stick and I stuck it down and I dragged it in the areas where these humps were, and it flattened it back out pretty good. I've got a tube here and I'm ready to siphon out all this epoxy if I have to, but right now it seems like it's cooled down, and the copper has still got some slight little ripples. You can see it there, and I think that's going to get a little bit better. I introduced some more bubbles dragging that stick across there. You know, you think you got this figured out, and then, you know, bam, you get sideswiped. I really don't want to try to suck all this epoxy out of here, because I've got these corners poured and I really don't want to mess with them, because if I suck this epoxy out, then I don't even know if I can siphon it up a little bit in that tube and then blow it into that bucket over there and then get it down enough. Basically I've got the temperature of that epoxy dropped down to what the room temperature was when I started the pour. So I'm thinking that copper has got to be shrinking back down. The epoxy is just in the gel stage right now. It's done kicking, so it's cooling down. So I'm hoping that that copper, as it cools, is going to shrink and pull in tension and take all those little mini ripples out. And actually, if it was more uniform, I could live with it. It doesn't look bad from certain angles. I really don't want to take the table apart again. I've already had one disaster, and this has nothing to do with the epoxy. This is design. This is a design fault. And I had just used an industrial spray contact cement, and I cemented that copper down to that 1/4 inch thick maple board below. So it was glued on. I sprayed both surfaces, let them dry, and then, you know, like they do countertops, and set it on there. And then I hand sanded it, so I was pushing it down pretty good. So it's glued down pretty good, but not enough to overcome the heat of the epoxy. Now maybe if I waited one day, that glue would have set and it wouldn't have let that copper buckle up, just like a highway in the summer when it gets too hot. It just humped up and humped up. Anyway, I hope it shrinks enough to get rid of those ripples. I'm almost at a point where I can live with it. With those little ripples, it's not that bad. If it's, at least if it's uniform. Anyway, let's see how it goes. Okay, I did a still video over a period of an hour, and this is run at 32 times the speed. Once again, I got a bad batch of product, in my opinion, and the only way to really show what was going on was to do this video, and it's some kind of a surface tension issue. It happened through the first 4 pours, and as you watch this, you can see that it's really hard to explain. I call them momentary bowl depressions, or like a pucker, and these puckers would stay in the final finish once it's set up, which I feel was unacceptable. Okay, it's 3 a.m. I just did my 5th pour at about 11:30, and it was kind of a significant pour. This this new or different epoxy that I've been using after the art resin disaster was flowing out nice and didn't have any issues with bubbles, but I did have an issue with it percolating, and I called them momentary bowl depressions because they would just appear out of nowhere at random. And I've got that, I did a time-lapse video which I'm going to include here. Nevertheless, everybody thought maybe I was doing something wrong, or I had some kind of contamination issue, or the fact that I was degassing the vacuum, or degassing the epoxy in a vacuum chamber. So anyway, right now this is the first batch I bought was just a 1 gallon kit, and then I realized that, well, I would make sure I got more. So they had a brand new 5 gallon kit that came in, and I went and picked that up, and I started using that. And basically every time I would pour, I would get this percolating, and it would start almost immediately, and it would just continue until it would gel. I don't know if I can catch that, but that didn't happen because this last batch, which I poured at anywhere from 1/8 to 3/16 inch thick, is not percolating. It's acting the way it should, perfectly flat, and it's been, well, let's see, I poured it at 11:30, so it's been 3.5 hours. So I'm pretty confident that there's something wrong with that first batch. So that's going back tomorrow morning. And I will add the video of what I had dealing with, and I've got about 3/8 of an inch left. So I've got about 2 pours left, a little bit more in the corner.